Hey everybody. So yesterday we were discussing Half-Life and nuclear power plants, and I want to give a big shout out to Marie Curie. You probably have heard that term Curie before. It comes from her last name. She did a lot of work in radioactive materials, and she won two Nobel Peace Prize by being able to measure how strong certain substances or how much radiation certain substances gave off. So the Curie is a unit of measurement of how much radiation that is actually given off. So there's going to be a threshold of how much radiation someone can withstand, and certain objects will continue to emit Curies over thousands and thousands of years. She died of radiation poisoning because prior to her work, no one even understood what this stuff was. I don't know if this is true or not, but they say that her notebooks glow, and she glowed a little bit as well. Madame Curie, Marie Curie, and we should definitely know that name. A pioneer scientist. And she won two Nobel Peace Prize, one in physics and one in chemistry. Her husband, I believe, was a chemist. I don't, I don't, I know both of them were really, really highly intelligent individuals. Anyhow, Marie Curie. Let's continue. So we're talking still about renewables here, and one of the big renewable types of energies is solar radiation or solar power. There are two categories. So in your brain, I want you to, when you think of solar, you're thinking of two different ways. One way is active, and the other way is passive. Active means very active, and passive means the opposite of active. Okay, so let's first talk about the active one, and the active one that we talk about is photovoltaic cells, also known as PV cells. So what's the difference? When we say active, that means sunlight is going to convert into something else before we're using it as usable energy. So in the case of PVCs, photovoltaic cells, sunlight is converted into electricity and therefore it is active. It changes from one form to another. Remember the first law of thermodynamics, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So in active, we have solar radiation coming from one source, sun, and then turning into electricity. Now, PVCs could be mounted on your homes. We live in the northern hemisphere. So I keep doing this about my daughter all the time now. Um, uh, we live in the northern hemisphere, so where should we point our solar panels? Well, we should point them to the south, right, on our south side of the house. And then, therefore, they would basically, when the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, we're gonna always get the maximum amount of sunlight. If we put it on the north side and we lived in the northern hemisphere, we might not get any sunlight. I mean, the sunlight's coming around. Maybe when we're tilted, we'd get a little bit depending on our geographic location. But for the most part, we should probably put them on the south side. So one fun thing that we do in the family when we used to be home, I can't wait to get home, um, is is well, we look at the directionality of a car if we're heading east or west, and then we locate the homes, and we're like, well, are the solar panels on the south side? And sometimes, most part, they are. A lot of times, the homes are not geographically perfect. Having a north, south, east, west side. Sometimes they're diagonal, but we find it interesting when we see solar panels installed. Most of them are on the south side. When we're looking at, like, let's say the uh, the solar panels that are on the telephone poles. I don't even know if they call them telephone poles anymore. The transformer poles, those are going to typically be also facing south, and most of those are all facing the same direction to maximize the amount of sunlight that they're going to get. Okay, so PVC cells, photovoltaic cells, it's a form of active um, solar radiation. It's an active type of energy because it's converting from one form to another. Let's look at this image. It's quite interesting. Electricity is the flow of electrons. Everything has protons, everything has electrons. So now with that, let's try to understand how these PVC cells work. So there's different materials, silicone typically, and glass, or I think glass is silicone. And the light energy is going to come in and it's going to create a flow of electrons. And so we have the negatively charged electrons going this way, the positively charged electrons go. Well, when the electrons move, then the opposite side automatically turns positive. So there we have two wires connected to those PVC cells, and now we could get the flow of electron and use that electric directly. So this is pretty much a simple way of understanding how PVCs work. Now there are a bunch of pros and cons to every single type of thing. There is a link here. Hopefully you could go back on the presentation and watch this little video, or I think it's actually an article. So let's look at the pros first. First, there's no greenhouse gases, which is great. It is completely silent, which is also great. Okay, that's pretty much a really good thing. That is a pro. Some people say they're affordable, and then that could also be a con too, because some people say they're expensive. So I guess it depends on your cash flow, or if the government's giving you a kickback, a green tax, or something like that. Now, a definite con of solar radiation is intermittency. I like that word. It's intermittent. Say it in your head. Intermittent basically means that it could be there or it could not be there. And so I know if I need to, let's say, construct a PowerPoint or give a presentation, I need electricity. What if it's cloudy? What if it's nighttime? And so if the sun isn't blaring or shining, then I'm not going to get any power. So intermittent issues are a thing. Also, like if it's cloudy, what's going to happen? Some of you might be thinking that, oh, why don't we just store it in the battery? That's not how these systems are set up so far. And I don't know if that's the right way to do it either. Because then, batteries, like we were talking about half-life before, they don't last forever. And so that would possibly cause some environmental issues too. Think about long-term use of batteries, and batteries are going to be electronic waste, and electronic waste is hazardous. So it's going to be, it would cause issues. So anyhow, it is intermittent. Okay. And they say they're not as efficient as they're working on efficiency, and that means like how much sunlight is really getting converted into, let's say, electrical energy. So some say they're working at 14 to 25%, and some people say that that's relatively low. But it's like, hey, it's the sunlight. It's like free. So why are you asking? Um, yeah. So those are some pros and cons of solar panels, so PVC cells. What can you do at nighttime? A lot of times in Jersey now, you can get these solar panels installed and you can use the energy during the daytime. And at nighttime, you're still hooked up to the grid. So I know the sales pitch that people sell is like, well, you can make your money back um, by selling your electricity that you're getting from your solar panels back to the electrical plant. And then when at nighttime, when you need electricity, you can pull from the plant. And so they have a hybrid type system there. I'm not going to say anything about the marketing of this thing, but one guy, someone approached me about buying them, and you got to look at the pros and cons and see how that works. I know it's like a 20-year contract just to lease them, so they'll install them free, but then you're held into a contract for 20 years, even if you sell the house. So I think the guy was going to tell me it was going to be $100 for my electricity a month for 20 years. And so if I did that math, I think we're roughly going over $20,000, so 24, I think $1,000 for the installation of the solar panels. And then, that would be over the course of 20 years. So I'm paying for the solar panels over the course of 20 years. Now, if I ever had to pull power from the grid, I would also have to pay for that power as well. So even though I'm agreeing to get the solar panels and they're installing it for free, I'm paying pretty much like $100 a month for that energy. That's not free. Does that make sense? I hope that made sense. It made sense. It made totally sense to me. But all the stuff is in my head, so I don't necessarily know if you understand it. Now, I'll just say this one caveat with the leasing. You don't own them. So um, the government sometimes gives you a green tax or a kickback. Well, since you didn't purchase them, I don't think that kickback can go back to you. So it goes back to the installation company because they technically own those things. So um, that is what. So I think that we should move towards. Hold on one second. Sorry, just was dealing with something. So I believe we were talking about leasing and the kickback. Oh, so this is what I recommend. First off, if you have 20 G's to buy these things outright, that might be a good thing to do, um, because you may get, and I've seen up to like 30% back from the government. So let's just say, you purchase these for 20 G's, you get 6 G's back, so that brings your installation cost to 14,000. Now, how long are these solar panels going to last? Well, if they're leasing them for 20 years, they should at least last for 20 years. And so now you're going to get renewable energy and get your money back in time. So I believe when I worked out the math, within about 10 years, you start making money back. And so that might be a good thing. Now, another good thing is too is that every year you have them installed, that might be a government kickback as well. So every year, let's just say, oh, you got solar panels, installation, we gave you, 30% back, whatever back, and then, oh, you have solar panels, 2,500 off your taxes too. So you might make that money back that way. So I recommend, it is something good to consider, specifically if you have an area that has a lot of area. Like I have trees right around my house. Which I like because it gives me shade. So I don't need as much air conditioning. But at the same time, it would be a good situation to have solar panels. So hopefully you understood that. And when you do make a decision, when you buy your own homes, um, and you know what, it would be great to get some feedback if you do have solar panels. Tell us how they work. If your family's in business with them, and everything I said was nonsense, please let me know too, so I could continue to learn as well. All right. So I know solar panels are a great use of technology, and we should continue using those. All right. Now let's talk about passive solar energy. So this is different from active. Passive is going to use the sunlight directly. It's not going to necessarily change form. So in here, let's look at this beautiful first image here. It's a famous image. Get used to this image. And so the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. And typically, I know here in the Dominican Republic, it gets really cold at like midnight. Um, but in the morning, when the sun starts to rise, that's when you want a lot of sunlight. So in this case, house design, and early Romans designed their house where they would have like an opening, a window where they're going to get that early sunlight in the beginning of the day. Then, as the sun keeps rising and the Earth's rotating, and pretty much from 12 to 2 p.m. is where the sun is directly overhead, and that's when it's beaten down. So around that time, you're going to have your roof, okay? And so your house would be relatively cool. Um, and then on the opposite side, they sometimes had stone or some type of radiation that could absorb this heat from that sun. So you could keep warmer during the nighttime. So basically, I'm just telling you what that image is showing us, but that is a use of passive solar radiation. A greenhouse would be using passive solar radiation as well. Never know if you've been into a greenhouse. There's a picture of one right there. They're extremely hot. That's like getting into a car in the summertime. The sunlight's going to penetrate through the glass. It cannot escape, so therefore the temperature increases inside. So same thing with passive solar radiation. So that's a use of passive solar radiation. You don't have, there's no moving parts or new technology that you necessarily need to use. So those are pros in that aspect. Okay, there's another way we can use passive solar radiation, and this one's a little more in depth. It's pretty controversial. There's a interesting video that you can watch here. Underneath here, it says, "Oh my God, the birds," and I say that because this is literally frying birds, and this would be a passive solar tower. It's different from PVCs. They look similar, but they're different. Let's figure out why. We're figuring out why because during PVCs, it's converted into electricity, right? But a passive solar tower is going to use sunlight directly. So let's look at this. This is the sun, and this image on the right. The sun is bouncing off these mirrors, then creating like a sun laser and warming this receiver here. This receiver gets so hot, so hot, so hot. And you're going to pump cold water up there. And then this thing is going to boil that water. And so you see that hot water creates that steam, turn a turbine, generate electricity via the generator out to the grid. Condenser cools that water once again. We continue this. Now, these solar towers have been put in like desert regions. And one interesting, I mean, not interesting thing, but imagine like, I mean, I'm not telling you to do this. I hope you never did this. But if you ever took a magnifying glass and you, in the summertime, fried an ant, all right, I'm not going to judge you if you did it. If you were under 10, I won't judge you. If you did it over 10, we need to talk to Miss Figueroa, and you should consider taking forensic science, because killing animals is really not cool. So anyhow, imagine like you're a bird, you're going through your migration pattern, and all of a sudden you just fly through a sun laser. And I think that's what that video is. So if you want to click on that link, I bet you could do a YouTube search and say birds getting fried by solar tower, and you will actually see them. They fly, they hit the laser, feathers pop off, and the bird just dies. So there's a lot of you're going to find a lot of literature out there regarding the birds, and there's kickback for this. So it's just like the never-ending story. Like, how can you win, right? We got to get off of fossil fuels. We've had this technology now, but now something else happens. Oh, story of my life. I'm just trying to fix the situation. All right. So these are solar towers. They're passive. They're different from PVCs. All right. So, like we said before, the cons, they can be expensive. They're intermittent. They could be hazardous waste after they're done. So, you can't just throw them in the garbage can. You're going to have to get rid of them a certain way. There is no storage of them. So basically when the sun's out, that's when you're going to get. And so in certain areas, there's going to be more sunlight. In other areas, it's not going to be as much sunlight. So they're not usable every single place. All right. Okay. Now, I was thinking, and this, this is even not on the AP exam, but I thought I solved the world's problems. And then I was speaking to a really good, smart guy, and this is called pumped hydro. And I don't know why we don't hear more about pumped hydro, uh, but basically, it's the same as a battery, and we're just going to use the power of gravity. Gravity never like goes away, right? So let's look at what pumped hydro is. And once again, you don't have to focus too much on this because it's not on the AP exam, but just think that if we could harness this technology, this is free energy and pretty much no cons. I don't see any cons. All right. Batteries, once they're used up, they become toxic waste. So how can we make something that's going to create electricity indefinitely, and it could work at nighttime? Because if solar power is an issue, well, at nighttime we need to continue to have power. Okay. Let's look at stored hydro. So we need elevation to do this, okay? And we're going to need a very efficient pump. And I think the technology is out there. We could get an air pump to do this, and we're going to have two reservoirs of water, okay? A top reservoir and a bottom reservoir. Then we'll have a pipe, and we'll just have that water. That water is going to flow, turn the turbine, create electricity. Now, well, part of that electricity, we could just pump that water right back up to that top reservoir. We could just turn this on and off as much power as we need. I don't necessarily see how it could have any cons. If you make artificial reservoirs, I know some wildlife are probably going to start uh, inhabiting that area. But this looks like a pretty cool thing. So I don't know why we don't really force this issue of stored hydropower. On a large scale, I think it could possibly work. We just need elevation and technology and these pumps and water. And I think we could possibly make this work. All right. I believe we're going to be done for today. You were an excellent class. I hope to see you soon.